Hello everybody and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol roster building video. And for this week's roster, I decided we're going to try to build a list where we incorporate as many or all, depending on how many are in the game, of the reroll bubble characters that exist. So this includes anything from characters like Shuri, who say pay X power to reroll X dice, or I think it's up to like 3. For allied characters specifically, that's the important part, is rerolls that affect more than the character in question. And yeah, we're just going to build a bunch of those and just have basically consistency the list, where every single model on the team will be providing rerolls to each other in some way, shape, or form, giving you so many layers of redundancy too, where you can kind of be like, I'm going to reroll that die. Oh, it failed. Well, this person's going to pay and I'm going to try again. No, this person's going to pay and I'm going to try again. That sort of deal. Keep it going. So, for starters, we're going to, whoops, not include Archangel there because he doesn't have those sorts of abilities. But for starters, we're going to have to figure out what affiliation we're going to be putting this in. And after putting some thought into it, I think we're going to be going with Shield for this, but it's going to be a minimal Shield roster where we're only going to have 3 characters because only 2 of their characters actually meet the requirements for this list, which isn't ideal, but their leadership also meets the requirement, so I think it's okay. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and start out with those characters, starting out here with Invincible Iron Man, who of course has the leadership that allows you to pay 1 power to reroll one of your dice, which is very, very good. And yeah, of course, the main thing we're looking for here is Jarvis. While allied character within 4 is attacking, during the modified dice step, he can spend 1 to 3 power to reroll their dice. So those are the sorts of abilities we're going to be looking for, and we are going to be looking to use his leadership here most of the time. But of course, we need at least 2 more shield models to be able to kind of consistently play shield here. So for those 2 more models, I think the choices here were relatively obvious. The first one is going to be Namor. And yeah, Namor is just got that charismatic leader ability there, giving himself and allies within 2 a single reroll on their attack or defense rolls. So he was going to make this list either way. And then we're not going to give him the time stone. That feels a little bit redundant here. But from there, we do have some choices to make on this last slot, because unfortunately, none of the other shield characters are giving rerolls out to their allies. So I felt like the closest we could do, and if I just go over to shield here real quick, I felt like the closest thing we could do to still staying on the theme was going to be Nick Fury. And the reason why I like Nick Fury for this is mainly because he has those grunts, which are really going to be able to benefit from having those extra rerolls on your team. In addition to that, I mean, he gives you a 3rd leadership option if we really want it. But the other thing is he kind of fits the theme because he gives the shield agents rerolls while they're within 3 of him. It's weak, but I think it's the closest thing we're going to get to staying on the theme and still, being affiliated somewhere. Now, there is going to be an argument as we go through this and we add some of these other 7 characters to this roster that we could have chosen to do an affiliation other than Shield by including a leader that didn't necessarily fit the theme on their own. But I really felt like with Invincible Iron Man, it just made a lot of sense to kind of focus on Shield here. So yeah, there are probably other ways we could have done this, and I'd definitely be curious to see how you guys might have chosen to approach this down below in the comments. So definitely let me know if you guys would have done things slightly differently as we go on. But with that said, I think it's time to start adding in all of our reroll bubbles. Alrighty, so first things first, right at the top of the page here, we have a couple we want to include. First of all, we have to make the choice between Baron Strucker and Baron Zemo. And this is where I kind of come into the idea of, if we want to do some different affiliations, we probably could have. We could take Strucker and use him as a Hydra leader, and we would have a couple options there if we wanted to go the Hydra route, or we could take either of them and potentially go the Cabal route. Now, unfortunately, because they are using the exact same ability here, that being Strategic Genius, their rerolls don't stack, so even though it's the exact same actual rules text as Namor's, because it's got a different name, it still stacks with Namor's, and we want these to stack as much as humanly possible. So we're going to be including Baron Zemo in this roster, because we're not going the Hydra route, but if we were going the Hydra route, I think Strucker would be a totally acceptable option. But yeah, Zemo's going to make a lot of sense here, just having that small reroll bubble. And from here, these are the only 2 characters that are going to have passive reroll bubbles. Everyone else is going to be active. They're going to have to pay power to use their rerolls. So with that said, I think it's time to add the first of those characters, which is going to be another Cabal Hydra character here in Arnim Zola. And yeah, he's got, I think it's, yeah, Hydra Engineering here, where you can pay X to up to 3 to reroll up to 3 attack or defense dice, and then potential downsides for skulls. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and include Zola there because he fits the theme, and that makes a lot of sense. And the next character we're going to be including here is Heimdall the All-Seeing, with his all-seeing eyes, being able to reroll attacking, defending, or dodge dice during the modified dice step, 2 dice for 2 power. And yeah, that just makes sense, so we're going to go ahead and include him here as well. He also has the added effect of being able to do things for Crisis or Tactics cards as well, which is kind of interesting. There's not very many models, if any, that can do that, so that's pretty cool and unique. I don't know how relevant it'll be, because I haven't really put too much thought into the cards yet, but definitely a neat idea. The next character we're going to be including on the list is actually a relatively new character, as in they haven't actually come out yet at time of recording and time of upload, I believe. So that's going to be Nova here, and Nova has his Xandarian World Mind here, which is a X cost up to 3, I believe, again. And this one is for defense or dodge during the modified dice step, spending up to 3 to reroll a die. And yeah, that fits the bill, so we're going to be going ahead and including Nova here as well. Not much further down the list, we also have Professor X here. If we wanted, we could probably have stretched to try and do this as an X-Men affiliated roster as well if we really wanted to. And here we have Professor's Guidance, range for attacking or defending, up to 3 power to reroll some dice. And yeah, once again, just doing the same thing as everybody else on the list, which is kind of the point. Next up on the list here, we have Sentinel Prime Mark 4, and yeah, he's got this, I believe, yeah, pattern analysis here. When him or an allied character within 4 is attacking or defending during the modified dice step of the attack, he can spend up to 3. And yeah, again, exact same as most of these other ones, but it does have a different name, so it does stack, and that's what we're trying to abuse here. Slightly further down, we also have Shuri here, who is kind of one of the original models for this types of role. English, very good. And we have the upgrades ability here, so yeah, exact same deal. And yeah, we're definitely going to want to include that as well. And with Shuri in the list, I believe that is going to be a list of 10 characters, and as far as I am aware, every single character in the game with this type of ability. It is possible I missed one or two. Definitely let me know down below if there are any that I'm missing. If you're screaming at the screen right now that I should have included character XYZ, you're probably right, and I just forgot about them, so hopefully that's not the case. But I do think we have a pretty cohesive list here. We actually have, 3 very, very solid shield models, a splash that's commonly seen in shield, so already we're off to a really, really good start here. And then, yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with just a bunch of characters with a bunch of rerolls. I have heard of some of these, specifically like Prime being run in Shield as being a thing, so that also makes it kind of interesting there. And yeah, I just think this kind of feels like a really neat list of just this is going to be consistency the list, and your average on your dice is going to be absurdly high as long as your allies have the power to spend, and in theory they will, because if they're all boosting each other, then all of them should have good builders, so the power should kind of share around relatively nicely. But with that said, it's time to go ahead and move into Team Tactics cards, where we're going to have some choices to make for this one. Alrighty, so first things first, we're going to take a look at our restricted slots here, and I think we're definitely going to want to include Brace for Impact. That card's just kind of a must-have right now, and from there we could kind of go with any of these. We might actually want to avoid Sacrifice, because you can't modify or add dice, and that's not great for us, because we have a ton of mods, so maybe we want to avoid Sacrifice there and go towards maybe something like a Patch-Up, where because of all of our rerolls, it's going to be really annoying to push through consistent damage on our characters, so being able to heal them up will definitely be something we can do that's kind of obnoxious for our opponent. From there, we want to look at some shield cards we might want to include, and I think the first one's going to be Battlefield Medicine here, for the exact same reasoning as our patch up there of just having, health points is going to be relatively valuable on our models with all of these rerolls that we're going to have. So yeah, being able to heal up some of our allies is going to be really, really nice, and also removing special conditions can be good if we get like rooted or something like that, and we really want to have the power for those rerolls. We can definitely take advantage of that there. One thing I do want to mention is we could include hard reset here, but I actually think we're better off with recalibration matrix, and the reason for that being we're probably going to have access to modding skull results because we're most likely going to be including the invaders leadership as one of our options here. So with that in mind, having the, where it is, there we go, recalibration matrix here, we're going to be able to reroll our own skulls on that most of the time anyways, and we don't want the opposing player to be able to reroll their skulls. So, I mean, I guess we'll just go ahead and include recal here right now because it just makes a lot of sense for this sort of list. But yeah, that is the kind of logic there of why we're taking recal over hard reset, is if we're playing invaders, this is just better, and if we're not playing invaders, then it's not like it's bad. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and go with that. As mentioned there, we are going to take the Invaders leadership because it is pretty good for a list like this where we can reroll so many dice. Being able to reroll skulls is probably going to be really, really valuable, and honestly, Iron Man's leadership will probably be overkill. So even though it's really on theme to go with Iron Man's, I think the list is probably better off with Invaders most of the time. And because we have Nick Fury, we're also going to be including Eye in the Sky. I know it's technically not a shield card, but it might as well be. Yeah, this card is really, really good. I don't think there's too much more to say about it than that. I want to include one more shield card, and for me, I think it's between Sitrep and Shield Mobile here. And for a list like this, I think I'm leaning towards Sitrep a little bit more. It's cheaper to play, so that's going to be good because I do think we're going to be relatively power hungry unless we have some good starting builders. And it kind of fits the theme more of our characters helping each other as well. So yeah, I do like Sitrep a lot, and I think he has a good spot on this roster. Moving into character cards, we do have a choice to make between Helios Laser and Stark Armory for Mr. Tony Stark. And I think because we're playing Shield, because we have all these rerolls, we're actually going to get more mileage out of Stark Armory than we would Helios Laser, which is really weird for me. Usually I'm a big Helios Laser fan, but in this case, I think Stark Armory is probably the better card, so we're going to be going ahead and including that. Next, we have a couple cards that I think are just kind of attached to a couple characters in the roster for the most part, and those are I Am a Baron After All, which is really, really good for Baron Zemo, so we're going to be going ahead and including that, and Prince's Protection, which is a great card for Namor, and I also would like to include that. And turns out that brings us to 10 cards, and usually I'd be a little worried about this few generics, but with 2 restricted cards here, probably at least 2, if not 3 shield cards we're willing to bring almost every game. And then, you know, Stark Armory, Eye in the Sky, Invaders, all being options that we'll be able to bring fairly frequently. Prince's Protection as well, for that matter. The only card that might not be eligible for pretty much, you know, every game is going to be I Am a Baron After All. And let's be real, we're probably including Zemo most of the time. So yeah, almost this entire list can be played basically any configuration, and that works pretty well for me. Lastly, we're going to move on to Crises selection here, and we definitely don't want to go too spread out with our Crises, because most of our reroll bubbles do end at range 3 or range 4, depending on the character, so we want to be able to take advantage of those as much as possible, and, you know, kind of layer them on top of each other. So generally speaking, we're going to be preferring those tighter maps, where we get to keep all of our models together. For extracts, I think we can kind of play into that idea with stuff like Paranoia if we want. We do also have access to a safe grab in the form of Namor, and it just kind of works for the idea of trying to keep our allies close together. So I think that one kind of works as our first pick. It might be a little fast scoring, but I think it's probably fine. From there, I think we like the idea of kind of down the middle ones here, so something like Montesi works pretty well for us, so I'm going to include that as well. And then the last one I want to include here is going to be Hammers, and the reason why I like Hammers is A, who doesn't like throwing more dice? More dice are fun, but B, throwing more dice is even better for us because we have all these rerolls, so those dice are more likely to succeed, and that just feels really, really good, so we're going to be including that as well. For our secures, we're going to be going with much the same idea of just trying to kind of close together here, and I think the choices for this are actually going to be really, really straightforward. First of all, we're going to be wanting Gamma Wave because Gamma Wave is pretty solid for us. It's going to be right down the middle, and yeah, that works nicely, although I might want to double check how we feel about 15 Threat. Okay, so 15 Threat might be a little bit awkward here because we have a 5 and 2 4s that are affiliated, but unfortunately that leaves us 2 Threat down, and that puts us in a bit of an awkward situation. Not actually 100% sure how to remedy that, so maybe we don't include Gamma. Interesting thought there. Yeah, that's a weird one because I don't think we have anything else on the list that we can substitute in to make that work and still be affiliated. So I think we might not be able to include Gamma. Alrighty, so with that in mind, Gamma is off the table, and so is Sword for that matter, both being 15 threat. And the idea behind this now is if we don't have a 15 threat scenario, then as long as they're not running Researcher specifically, then if we win priority, we pick our secures and make sure that they, if they don't have Researcher, we pick our secures and they can't pick 15 because we won't have a 15. And if we lose priority, we won't have a single 15 in our selection here and we'll be able to pick the threat level. So yeah, that'll kind of be the logic here. And from there, we have to pick what works with that. So the other ones I did want to include here are going to be Deadly Meteors. This is just going to work well for us because everyone is nice and close together. So that's going to be good for us. And Demons Downtown is going to make a lot of sense here as well. Nice and close together. Same logic with Gamma. But it's going to be on that E shape, which is just really, really nice for us on a higher threat. From here, not being able to include Gamma makes this really, really interesting. We have a couple options that I don't hate. Obviously, like Sword or Gamma would be really, really solid for us. This could be interesting, but I think we're really going to be penalized by the stuns, so we probably don't want to go for that. Something like a D-map is definitely way too spread out for us to really take advantage of our stacking here. We do have options like Intrusions, which is a straight line, and in theory kind of lets us clump our characters together and take advantage of the reroll layers there. But the awkward part about it is if our opponent's kind of mostly hanging out on, say, this point, and we're over here, the optimal thing to do usually would be to be like, teleport over here, punch them a bunch, and then try to teleport back. But in the case where we are trying to get all these benefits from all these rerolls and things like that, teleporting away from our reroll bubbles doesn't really feel all that great. So not sure how to feel about that one. It's definitely an interesting one for a list like this. One that I do think is really interesting and potentially really good for us is Guardians Save Shi'ar Empress in Style. And yeah, I think this one could be really, really interesting for us. It's a little bit closer together than most other kind of spread out objectives like this, like a B map. I'm pretty sure 4 and 2 is further in than, oh yeah, these are just 4, so it definitely is. 4 and 2 is going to be further in than say your B map, and even the 5 and 2 up is pretty standard. But yeah, I think this kind of allows us to play with those bubbles a little bit better than most of the other maps. Not 100% sure about how crossing this way is going to work for us. Crossing this way, we can usually get to our favor, especially with the range 4 bubbles. Maybe something to keep in mind if we end up pulling this scenario. It's definitely going to be the weakest of the scenario list for this list, but I think it's probably the next best pick. And there we have the final version of the roster. So, going through our characters here, we've got 3 Shield-affiliated characters, Invincible Iron Man, Namor, and Fury. We got Zemo bringing in his reroll aura. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different characters with bubble variable power rerolls, except for Heimdall. His is fixed. Everyone else is variable here. And those characters include Artem Zola, Heimdall, Nova, Professor X, Sentinel Prime, and Shuri. And yeah, that's going to be a lot of rerolls. Some of them are defense only versus attack only on some others, so there's going to be a little bit of variety between them there, but for the most part, it's just going to be so many rerolls on so many different types of roles. Scrolling down a little bit, we get our team tactics cards where we have Brace and Patch Up for our restricted slots here. Shield cards, we have Battlefield Medicine, The Invaders, and Sit Rep. And then we move into character cards where we have Eye in the Sky, Stark Armory, I Am a Baron After All, and Prince's Protection. And then we got one generic here in Recalibration Matrix. Lastly, we have our crises. For our extracts, we have Paranoia, Montesi Formula, and Fear Grips World as worthy terrorized cities. And for secures, we have Deadly Meteors Mutate Civilians, Demons Downtown, and Guardians Save Shi'ar Empress in Style. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this came out. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that we were at least able to hit 9 out of 10 of these characters having some form of reroll aura. Fury obviously doesn't really, he kind of has the thing with the agents, but I'm not really counting that. I just think it's the best justification I can find for him being here, other than the fact that he makes it affiliated. So yeah, that is a kind of necessary evil of the list. Maybe I'm missing something. I totally am open to the idea that there is a leader that obviously would have worked really, really well, or an affiliation that would have worked really, really well, and I just completely glossed over it. I wanted to avoid characters where it was like just the leadership and they didn't do it themselves otherwise, which is why we didn't do like Wakanda, where we could have Black Panther be that character or something like that. But yeah, if there are other ways that this could have worked better, definitely curious to hear how you guys might have done this down below. But that is going to do it for my version of this roster, at least. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Helps me out a bunch. Lets me know you guys are enjoying the stuff we are throwing out here. But that's going to do it for now. So until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.